welcome to this edition of Go Vote Omaha, presented by the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha. I'm Rachel Gibson, Vice President of Action for the League of Women Voters of Nebraska, and I will be our facilitator for tonight. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization and does not endorse political candidates or parties. Our purpose is to empower voters and defend democracy. Go Vote Omaha focuses on policy issues, and as a result of our discussion, we hope you will be ready to make an informed decision during election time. Tonight is the first of two sessions we have the opportunity to hear from candidates for the state legislature running in different Omaha metro area districts. Our objective is for voters to hear about issues and policies directly from the candidates in a nonpartisan environment. To find out what district you are in and what candidates will be on your ballot in November, visit vote411.org. Organized and published by the League of Women Voters of Nebraska Volunteers, this one-stop shop for election-related information. It provides specifics about the election process, details about general and state candidates, and information directly from candidates about their platform for the candidates who responded to the vote411.org questionnaire. As our organization is committed to transparency, we want to be clear about our process for tonight's event. We invited all candidates from the Omaha metro area state legislative races. Candidates were provided 2 date options and were contacted several times. We engaged all candidates equally. Some did not respond, some could not attend due to schedule, and some declined. Due to the number of candidates who did indicate interest, a second part session will take place later this month, and another set of candidates for legislature will be present. The opponents of 2 of our candidates here tonight have agreed to participate in our next forum. The candidates here tonight and at the next conversation are those who were willing and able to connect with voters through the League and this hosted event. Thank you very, very much for being here. We appreciate it. The format tonight also utilizes methods to ensure equitability and transparency. As facilitator, I will ask a series of questions that each candidate will have equal time to respond to. The order was determined by a drawing, and the first speaker will shift for each question. All right, so let's jump right in there. So, on to questions. We're going to begin. Each candidate will have 1 minute to introduce themselves and their opening statement, and then we will begin with questions, and starting right here with Senator Hunt and moving down the table, shifting each question. So with that, I will turn it over and you can begin your introduction.
All right, thank you, Rachel. Hi, everybody. I'm Megan Hunt, and I represent District 8 in the Nebraska Legislature. And first, I just want to thank the League of Women Voters and all of their volunteers and staff who have put this forum together and who are doing so much to make sure that the voters, all of you, are able to connect with the people who want to represent you, because that's so important, especially in these times right now. So I'm Megan, and I represent District 8, which includes the neighborhoods of Dundee and Benson and parts of Keystone. I'm a 6th-generation Nebraskan. I've been a business owner in my district for about 20 years, and I'm also a public school parent. I have a 7th grade son named Ash as well. And you know, I've been an activist, I've been an advocate in my community for a really long time, and one thing led to another, and I found myself here. So representing you in the Nebraska Legislature has been so far the privilege of a lifetime. It's such a unique opportunity, and you know, I'm looking forward to 4 more years. Thank you so much.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and move on to our second candidate here tonight. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Stu Dornan. I'm running for Legislative District number 20. I also want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting this on. It's very, very important for candidates to be able to tell the constituents exactly where they are on different issues so that they have as much information as possible. My background, my wife and I have been married for 37 years. We have 9 children, and we just had our 5th grandchild. As far as my personal career, I've been a trial attorney for most of my career. Originally out of law school, I was a special agent with the FBI, served as Douglas County attorney, and have served on the West Side School Board and currently Educational Service Unit 3. I've done a lot of public service in my life. I feel that it's very, very important to contribute to the community. Been on a number of boards, including Lutheran Family Services and Community Alliance. I have a particular interest in mental health, and I really appreciate being here tonight. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Stu. I'm Brad Von Gillern. Again, Rachel, thanks for having us here tonight. I'm a candidate for Legislative District 4, which is in West Omaha and part of Elkhorn. I've been running a business for the past 21 years. I'm CEO and president of a company called Leader Construction. And this is actually my first entrance into politics, but is not my first entrance into community service. I've served on numerous boards. I've been a part of the Boy Scouts. I've been a part of the Salvation Army, the Southwest YMCA, and I served on the Millard Public School Superintendent Advisory Council. So I've become accustomed to, giving my time away, so joining the legislature is a short walk. So anyway, I've been part of public service here in Omaha for a long time. Married my high school sweetheart, Mary. We've been married for 41 years. We have 4 grown children and 6 grandchildren, one of whom will formally enter the world in about 6 weeks.
All right, I am Robin Richards, and I am running for Legislative District 12, and that covers Ralston and part of Millard. I've spent the last 5 years being an accountant for the state and working for the National Endowment for the Arts and Accessibility in Arts. I've also served on the Ralston Public Schools Board of Education as their vice president, and I'm finishing a master's degree in government finance and public policy through Colorado State University. I'm a proud graduate of the UNO University System and Ralston Public Schools. My mother was also a graduate of Ralston Public Schools, and 6 generations of my family have lived in Legislative District 12. I care deeply for my community, and I am so happy to have the chance to serve them.
Go Rams.
Absolutely.
Well, hello, and thank you, Rachel, for having us. I'm used with the last name Young of always going last, but my name is Michael Young. I'm running for LD 18, and boy, am I excited to be here. After winning our primary as a father, as a community advocate, I've dedicated my entire life to not only go through the things that my learned experiences have brought to the table, but also I'm very excited about representing my district. The district is essentially Northwest Omaha, starting at Emmanuel Hospital and going into Irvington, and then all of Bennington and Elkhorn. And as a product of Omaha Public Schools and having 3 school districts, Bennington, Elkhorn, as well as OPS, I look to be an advocate to fight for those in our community. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much. Again, we really, truly appreciate you being here and the ability to talk directly to voters. So with that, we'll jump in, and just a reminder, I'll ask a question and we'll start. And since you started, we'll start with Mr. Dornan, if that's all right with everyone. So this one will go to you first, and then we'll just move down the line. All right. What is the best way to address our current criminal justice system pressures, including prison overcrowding, sentencing reform, and restoring voting rights for former felons?
All of those are really important issues, and I've been fortunate to be on all sides of the criminal justice system as a special agent with the FBI, as the Douglas County attorney, and also as a criminal defense attorney. We need to do everything we can to, from early childhood, to be able to provide services to all of our children so that they have the support that is necessary for them to be able to move through their lives in a positive way. With respect to the overcrowding of the prison system, I think we need to do everything that we can to try to avoid building a new prison. We need to make sure that folks who are incarcerated have the ability to rehabilitate themselves, and that can be through many means. What we most want is when somebody comes out of being incarcerated, we want them to be able to be integrated into the community, and that involves support, excellent jobs, and the ability to become a taxpayer rather than a tax burden. All of those things are very important, and I have a lot of experience with them, and am a tremendous believer in what's called restorative justice.
Wonderful. Thank you. And like we said, we'll just move down the lines. Go ahead. Same
Right.
question.
So I agree with much of what Stu shared. Obviously, the prison system is there for several purposes. One is to protect the public from people that might harm them. But a second purpose that I think we've unfortunately overlooked in recent years is the opportunity to reform and to educate and to give people another chance to live a productive life. And we need to do all that we can to do that. There are unfortunately career criminals. There are people that are determined to be of harm to others, and we do have to find the room to unfortunately house those folks for long periods of time. I'm not necessarily a believer that a judge's sentence should be dictated by the capacity of the prison system, and if that means that we need to add additional housing for prisoners, then I would support that. But I absolutely do believe that we need to do everything that we can to reform, to educate, to avoid recidivism, not only for the benefit of the person that's been convicted and is serving their time, but for the benefit of the community.
Thank you.
So we all know what a huge advocate Steve Lathrop was for the criminal justice system and all of the things that need to happen within it to actually be a state system that we can be proud of. Right now we're overcrowding those systems. Right now we are not doing anything for sentence reform. All of those items that we talk about so regularly, he was out there fighting for. And I'm never going to pretend to be Steve Lathrop or step into his seat and know what he knows, but I would fight to keep another prison system from overburdening our financial systems. I would fight to keep another prison from being built to house more prisoners, when what we could be doing is sending people who have been through the services that these gentlemen talk about back out into the world to be productive citizens. I deeply believe that there is no way to build ourselves out of the mess we've gotten ourselves in with the overcrowding and the reports that came forward from the legislative system last year said that we will never get out of it that way. So I believe in releasing people and letting them be productive citizens.
Thank you.
So we have to be honest about our prison system. First of all, there's people who are in the prison system because they're going through life experiences. And on average, the state is spending roughly $200,000 per inmate, a person who's incarcerated on average. And that is after these people are in our community with symptoms, right? There's always going to be violent offenders, and I do believe we need to lock them up and keep them in there. But if we're not putting resources, financial resources, and lowering the barrier of access to those, the three phases are incarceration, right? The pre, intro, while they're serving their time, and then post. We need to be able to touch base with these folks on all three. Two, we need to do a better job of sentencing. It's not that we're locking up more people, it's that we're keeping people longer. We have to be honest about that. And honestly, the overcrowding issue is I'd like to see the nonviolent offenders being supported appropriately. And imagine if they're not staying in prison longer to become better criminals with those violent ones. I'd like to see more community outreach done. And instead of that $200,000 on average at the end, let's focus on the cause and put a fraction of that into community services ahead of time.
Thank you.
Thank you. A lot of great points have been made. It's really hard to talk comprehensively about this issue in 1 minute, but honestly, we know a lot of the answers to this problem. We had an excellent criminal justice reform bill last year. It was totally comprehensive. It was based on millions of dollars of research, paid for by taxpayers, that led, the experts on the Nebraska Judiciary Committee and all of the people who were informing them to put together a really great package. But unfortunately, politics happen. The thing that people need to understand is that you're not going to elect one person to go in there and have the answer and say, we're going to solve criminal justice, reform and all of our problems with this answer that I've come up with. We know what to do. What we need to do is overcome the political pressure that we sometimes feel as lawmakers and work together to come to a solution instead of sabotaging everything at the last minute. And finally, it's also time for Nebraska to begin reconciling its failed war on drugs by looking at who we have incarcerated for drug offenses, looking at allowing people to erase or modify their records and do right by these people in our communities.
All right, thank you for that first doozy of a question. We're going to follow it up with another doozy of a question. So this time we'll start with Mr. Van Gillern. Abortion and reproductive rights will surely be a topic during the next legislative session. Do you favor legislation? And if so, what would you support in a bill?
I would have supported Senator Salama's heartbeat bill had I been in the legislature in this last term. This is a topic that I'm passionate about. It's a topic that's very personal to me. My mother and her twin sister were adopted. We have 2 adopted kids. We have a family member that gave up a child for adoption. And so we've seen this conversation up close, and we've seen the alternatives and some of the challenges that present themselves to people that experience unplanned pregnancies. But it's really more of it's not necessarily a pro-birth decision, it's a pro-life decision. And I believe that being pro-life means that you believe that you support life in all stages and in all conditions, and that includes the elderly, that includes children, that includes the affirmed and the handicapped. So I'm passionate about that topic and that issue. I believe it also extends to kids that are in foster care and doing everything that we can to improve the foster care system. It applies to people that are in sex trafficking and other scenarios that are dangerous. So I think pro-life is a very broad issue, and it needs to be addressed that way.
Okay, so I am a pro-choice candidate. I believe that what happens between you and your doctor is a private moment between you and your doctor, and your health care is between you and them. I also believe that the systems such as foster care and adoption agencies are already overburdened and overwhelmed. When they tracked the statistics after Roe versus Wade, clear back in the 70s, they found that the systems were less overburdened. There were fewer kids in foster care. There were fewer kids that were homeless. There were fewer need to draw on the system that was already overwhelmed 50 years ago. So I believe that it is your choice what happens with your body, and I believe that that is between you and your doctor.
These are doozies, Rachel.
I'm so sorry.
No, but that's why we're here, and this is why we run. So in stance, I'm also a pro-choice candidate. In that regard, I feel that elected officials should not be restricting access to health care, and my opinion is abortion is health care. As a father who lost his first child, let me tell you, I know exactly how valuable that is. And I don't think there's anybody who is excited about abortion, but I think I am not a doctor, I am not a mother, and I think that decision needs to be wholeheartedly made between the mother, the doctor, and the person's faith. Additionally, from the perspective to lower abortion rate, not the access to it, we need to have better comprehensive sex education. If we're wanting to have a real conversation about how these unplanned pregnancies happen, we need to educate our communities. Lastly, majority of Nebraskans actually side and want to have a pro-choice state, and I'm going to stand behind them.
So this is a very personal issue to everybody. There is probably nothing more divisive that we could discuss than abortion. And my view is that every pregnancy is different, and politicians and the government don't know better than a person themselves, or they don't know better than a doctor who's using their best judgment to make a diagnosis and provide health care. And we have allowed government to come too far into our personal lives when we start doing things like prosecuting people for their pregnancy outcomes, investigating why people are having miscarriages. And when we come down with a total abortion ban, Nebraskans, that's exactly what happens. Every pregnancy is different, and it's not for me to judge, it's not for anybody in the legislature to tell any Nebraskan what's best for them in their health care. Adoption is not an alternative to abortion. It's an alternative to parenting. And we don't know the circumstances behind every pregnancy. We don't know the circumstances behind everybody's life. And for that reason, we need to keep abortion legal. We need to trust Nebraskans and trust healthcare providers to use their best judgment and make their own decisions that are best for them and their families.
This is an issue where there are two very a compelling interest. The interest of the woman who is pregnant, who is often powerless, who is often vulnerable, and who may be in great need of health care for her safety. But there's another compelling interest, and that compelling interest is in potential life, because the child in the womb is also powerless, vulnerable, and innocent. And it's difficult to strike a balance with respect to that. But we need to, because we have to take care of both of those interests. And I think the decision in Roe versus Wade did about as good as could be done with respect to dealing with both of those compelling interests. I think all of us should be doing everything that we can to reduce abortions, and I think we need to provide for education for women to understand the consequences, and I think we need to provide as much support for both the woman who is pregnant and the child who is pregnant, not just pro-birth, but for their lives.
Thank you. All right, well, I am just going to keep on the doozies since you all are doing just such a wonderful job. So several senators stated that they intended to bring legislation to further loosen gun restrictions in Nebraska in the upcoming session. What do you think is the appropriate level of regulation of firearms?
I think we are kind of there now, and I would never back an open carry, and I will tell you why. I lived in Phoenix for a year and a half when I was pregnant with my first child and when I very first got married. And in the time that I lived there, there was 296 road rage related shootings. That wasn't even other gun violence that happened in the city. That was people that got into fights with somebody on the road and pulled out a gun and shot them. I would never want to see that in our state. I would never want to see the chaos and terror that that caused. And so I would never, ever back an open carry law. There's no need for it. The worst one that I saw was they saw that a woman was pregnant and they killed her and her spouse anyway. When you're in that heated moment and you don't have a minute to stop and think about what you're doing and that gun is at your side, you can make a horrible choice that can haunt you for the rest of your life.
So from a gun regulation perspective, I'm a proponent of the Second Amendment. Right? I have long guns in my house as well. But I am not a proponent of constitutional carry. I am a proponent of what the city of Omaha currently has in place, so you have to be 21 and register your guns and firearms as well. And it's Nebraska. There's Omaha, Lincoln, and there's kind of the rest, right? But my district is in that urban divide and a little bit of rural in there. And gun violence and access to those guns is a real serious conversation that we need to have, and it's not one size fits all. And right now I do support what Omaha Police Department has for those restrictions here within the district. Two, we need to have a very serious conversation about age restrictions and education around long guns like AR-15s. As a father with 2 kids in public schools, I'm still scared at days, and I'm tired of having the conversations of, do you know what to do with your book bag? Do you know how to text? We need to be honest, and I think as a state, if we talk about really caring about Nebraskans in the future, we need to talk about how our kids need to be safe. We should no longer be talking about kids being afraid in school.
I support training and registration for gun owners, and this is, a type of regulation that most gun owners actually support too. We live in a different world today in 2022 than the founding fathers did, where the types of weapons that they had when they were writing the Constitution, it's just not reality anymore. They couldn't even conceive of a world where you can have one gun and kill so many people at the same time. And we need our laws to reflect that reality. A lot of people don't know that when I was in college, I was the president of my campus conservatives group, and I was also the founder of the Second Amendment Club at the college that I went to. So I led, hundreds of students in getting gun safety training and knowing how to responsibly use a firearm, and the types of gun regulations that I support still today. I've still got that libertarian streak in me, really. I support the types of regulations that most responsible gun owners support. And I don't think that we should overblow that or make it super political or super controversial, because it's actually a really popular view.
Every constitutional amendment is not absolute, and that goes for the Second Amendment too. It's very important to allow people, responsible gun owners, to have weapons, but it's also very responsible to have things like red flag laws and background checks. With respect to issues of AR-15s and semi-assault weapons, one of the things that is very important as a legislator is to determine whether you pass a law, whether it's constitutional. And that requires a lot of thought, and it requires a lot of testimony with respect to the current state of the law. So when I raise my hand as far as upholding the Constitution, which I've done a number of times, that's a big factor in making sure that whatever laws that are passed are constitutional.
Senator Hunt, I actually agree with a couple of things that you said about the Second Amendment, and which I'm pleased about.
I'm like, careful how much you agree
Yeah,
with.
it's nice. It's nice to find common ground with people. I agree that training is very beneficial. I've been through a number of training classes, and actually my concealed carry permit, for some reason foolishly let it expire. I had to take the class again, and I learned something both times, and I think that was beneficial, and it's made me a more responsible gun owner. And I also have a little bit of a libertarian streak in me, so that's nice to hear also. I would have supported Senator Brewer's constitutional carry bill last year with the amendment that the Omaha Police Officers Association proposed. Now, unfortunately, that amendment was not added to the bill, and it did not pass. I've talked to the OPOA at length about this. I've talked to the sheriff's candidates at length about this to find out what their opinions are, what will make the people of our community the safest, and we concur on those thoughts. So one last thing, I want to challenge at least one comment that was made, and there are crimes that are stopped every day by legal gun owners, and we have to recall that, legal gun owners and carriers, and we have to remember that too in this conversation.
All right, well, the next question is also still a doozy, but at least we're talking about something happy, which is kids. So shifting gears, and I believe, Mr. Young, you're starting this one? Okay, just making sure we're all on the same page here. What do you see as the most pressing issue in K through 12 education, and what will you do to tackle that?
Well, I think that answer really just comes down from support. Nebraska has to do a real hard look at itself with how we fund public education. 60% of property taxes go to public education. We talk about how we want to attract and retain youthful folks. We want to have educators here. It's hard to do that when you're number 49 out of 50 in the United States from a funding legislative perspective. And the reality is that the state is kicking the can down the curb to the local districts and counties, and the state needs to have a bigger support. That alleviates and lowers property tax dollars. Talking to Department of Ed and just seeing the history behind, the more the legislature supports and funds public education, you see the local property taxes go down. And let's just look at OPS. 700 teachers just left in this last school year. And we need to attract and retain students. We're lucky that we have some of the ARPA dollars that we do right now, but that well will run dry. And I think we need to be honest that if Nebraska is to be the good life, we need to make sure that we're supporting our educators, because every single person in this room had their favorite teacher. We need to have that love.
I think right now the number one problem that's facing our schools is staffing. And this is a problem that we're seeing across all kinds of sectors, right? It's not just education. Businesses are having trouble hiring people, and schools are no different. And I agree with the points that Mr. Young made about taking a sober look at how we're funding public education in Nebraska. Again, kind of going back to an early answer I gave, there have been great solutions suggested. There are lots of ways that we can solve this. The problem isn't coming up with a solution. The problem is finding 33 people to agree on the solution in a very politically diverse legislature. So What I always focus on as a lawmaker is asking myself with every piece of legislation that we consider, how is this improving people's quality of life? How is it making it easier to live in Nebraska? How are we staying out of people's business and leaving them alone and making sure they can keep their own money and support their families and have a good life here? So looking through that lens of every kind of legislation that we discuss, these are the kinds of things that actually make a difference to parents and teachers and school staff, and that's what we have to focus on.
Starts with birth. It starts with Head Start programs with respect to making sure that every child has the opportunity to have the most advantageous childhood. With respect to the staffing, we have to do a much better job of growing our own teachers. A number of districts are doing that. We're tapping a senior in high school on the shoulder and saying, hey, you're somebody that looks like you may have an interest in education, and then supporting that. Whether that be credits as far as helping with their education or loan reduction, all those things are very important. We need to be sure that we fund our education as much as we can, and that would probably involve getting more state aid to take the burden off of some of our homeowners. And we can do better with providing state aid. And one of the things we can do is to take a look at some sales tax exemptions in order to accomplish that.
I think there are really three major things that we need to talk about when it comes to public education. The first is wages and salaries, making sure that they're adequate, that they're attractive to draw people into education. Second are behavioral issues. Every district is struggling with behavioral issues and what to do with the consequences of a child that's disruptive in class and the disruption that causes the education of the other students in the classroom. And then thirdly, I believe that we've got to get the schools back to a curriculum that is focused on the core elements, the STEM elements that will actually make us competitive in a global economy, that'll make our students employable as adults and responsible taxpayers. I think we've done far too much social experimentation in our public schools, and we need to draw back to we called it the 3 R's when I was a kid. Today we would call it STEM education and everything that goes with that. I met a week and a half ago with Dr. Schwartz, the new superintendent of Millard Public Schools, and I've had long conversations with several teachers on their front porches as I'm out campaigning and picking their brains on this, and they would affirm the three things that I just shared.
So as someone who sits on a board of education currently, I can tell you that most of the problems boil down to funding. TIOSA is a great system, however, it's never been fully funded in our state. The fact of the matter is that we use education as a slush fund, which leaves no money for capital improvements or ways to give teachers a bonus. It doesn't give any room for all of the things that we say education should be in our state. Ralston Public Schools did not have the exodus everyone else did. We had less than 10% rollover in our staff across the board. And that was because we gave each of them $2 raise, every hourly employee. And it's not because we have some money tree sitting in our backyard, it's because we committed our funds to making that happen. If we fully funded education in our state, we could have career training that looks more than let's tap them on the shoulder and see if they want to teach. We can offer them classes. We can give them a background in teaching before they ever even walk out of our classrooms.
All right. Moving on to our next question. The president just signed into law the biggest climate change investment in American history, which includes funds to help rural communities develop solutions to be resilient to climate change. On a state level, how should Nebraskans be addressing climate change?
So we really don't get these questions in advance, and these things make me so nervous because it feels like a quiz.
I'm so sorry.
No,
I feel
you're
so
good.
bad.
But I have strong feelings about this. Climate change is one of the top issues that matters to people in my district. When I knock doors, gosh, we've knocked over 25,000 doors in District 8, and climate change is consistently in the top 5, if not the top 3 issues. What I would like Nebraska to at least do, which we have not been able to do, and we have tried, is putting together a climate change commission to make recommendations to lawmakers about what kinds of policies we should be looking at to build a sustainable future for our agricultural economy. That's our biggest economy in Nebraska. This is the most important thing that we do here in terms of our economic sustainability. And climate change is a huge threat to that. We have to be planning for the future. And it cannot be a political opinion that we base those plans for the future on. It has to be informed by research and evidence, and we need the experts to tell us what we should do. That, at the very least, is what I would really like to see us do in the legislature.
We don't talk about posterity anymore, and we need to talk a lot more about it, because our children are going to be left with what we have chosen to do or not to do. And climate change is a pro-life issue. It's one where we need to work together, both personally with respect to doing everything we can to reduce harmful toxins that go into the air. And we also need a comprehensive plan with respect to businesses. And how can we help businesses and the agriculture community move towards cleaner energy and move towards a place where we are in a position to leave our children with a far healthier environment? Because if we don't do something now, it's going to be too late, plain and simple.
I don't think there's any question about the fact that climate has changed. I've been on this earth 62 years now, and I've seen it up close and personal. I think the question is the cause of the change and how much human element is at play in that. I'm also old enough to remember when we complained about putting smog devices on cars, and that turned out to be a pretty good thing back in the 70s, and lots of advances have been made there. I love our state. I love our environment. I love being outdoors. I want to do everything that we can to protect that. I think that the struggle that I have is an illustrative return on the investment in many of the things that were proposed and actually passed in the climate change legislation, and how effective those might be. To bring it back into Nebraska terms, one of the challenges is our own infrastructure as far as the ability to charge electric vehicles. Simply the infrastructure doesn't exist today to be able to do that. The second challenge will be what happens if electric vehicles become dominant and they're not buying gas, which pays the gas tax, which takes care of our roads. And so that'll be a struggle that the legislature will have to deal with.
So I grew up the granddaughter of a farmer from Butler County. And in the time that I was with him before he passed, he told me once that the job of the legislature and the people who take care of our state is to protect and to provide resources to our citizens. That is their strongest duty in Lincoln, to make sure that we each have what we need to be productive. And I believe that climate change was one of the things he was talking about. I'm not sure that anybody has studied this fully enough that we really understand what the answer is, but I think we better find it and find it quickly, or our kids are going to be in trouble. We've watched it, even in the 40 years I've been alive, change and change and change and get worse, and all we do is sit and watch. So I would love to watch Megan's commission come to life and find out what is the real answer to this question. Because we can invest money, but unless we invest it in the right place, it's just spending money.
So, as a district that has ag as well as urban, it's quite the sprawl in LD 18. And as a candidate being endorsed by farmers and the Sierra Club, this is something I hold near and dear to my heart. As a former chairman of the Transit Authority, putting compressed natural gas buses in our communities, moving around, investments with electric buses, that's cleaner air in our city and in our streets. I couldn't be a bigger advocate of it. Additionally, OPPD is making some pretty big strides. Unfortunately, I'm not at that meeting right now, around eliminating coal. However, in my district, there has been mass investments around natural gas use, peak plants. They're capturing methane and out at the landfill, and that's just in my district, and I can't wait to see when coal is leaving. But most importantly, we have to be honest with the data and the scientists. Yeah, I just read that there was the hottest day on the history of the planet that's ever been recorded was last week at 126 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the actual temperature. There's no way that we cannot admit that there is a human element, and we need to be honest and good stewards of our land, and we need to leave it better than we found it.
All right. Will you work to preserve the nonpartisan nature of our unicameral, and if so, how?
George Norris had it right. In the 30s, when he was in Washington, it was gridlock. And he believed that moving to a unicameral system where every senator had put in a vote, have their mark on a vote, was a lot better than having caucuses, party caucuses, control what originally started out as a bill and then turned into something else. I'm much more interested in people and principles with respect to moving legislation forward. I'm a firm believer in finding common ground. I have support through many, many, many different people across, whether they're Democratic, Independent, or Republican. And one of my goals is to act in the best interest of the state, to serve the greater good, and that includes making decisions that are based on truth, that are based on justice, and are based on caring and loving our neighbors.
The answer to the question is yes. I would preserve the bipartisan nature of the unicameral. I think it's important. I think it's obviously unique. It's something unique to Nebraska in the nation, and it's proven to be effective. But I also think we need to be honest with ourselves, and that is that quite often the votes fall on party lines. So I think preserving the nature of bipartisanship is important. But it quite often falls down to party lines when it comes down to votes. Being in the business world, again, this is my first entrance into politics, not into public service, but into politics. Being in the business world, I understand you get nothing done without some level of compromise. And I understand that you need to work with people, you need to understand their motivations, you need to understand why they are leaning the way that they are, or pulling in the direction that they are, and you need to communicate with them with honesty and integrity. Compromise does not mean you compromise your character or your ethics, but it does mean that you find a point of compromise that's best for the citizens of the state of Nebraska.
So I'm probably just a little bit unique in the fact that most of the people in my district have known me since I was in diapers. So when I walk door to door, I don't even bother to check if there's a Republican or a Democrat behind the door, because there's a good chance that it's Mike I grew up with or Andy, his dad. And so I don't even really canvass my district in a partisan way. I talk to every single voter, regardless of party status. And I would bring that right on down to Lincoln with me. Every single person that I talk to is not necessarily an R or a D in my eyes. In my eyes, they're the person who lives down the street from me. They're the person that graduated with my nephew Ben. You know, they're people that I have known my entire life. And I would do things in the legislature like keeping the committee chairs votes, who gets to be the chair of each committee. I would keep that private because I fear that if we politicize even that, it will change our system in a way that we cannot get back. We have to make sure that the things that we are already doing stay in place to keep that nonpartisanship.
Great answer.
Well, thank you.
From a unicameral perspective, we have to really look at how unique Nebraska is really set up and how that really benefits that. And I agree to folks here in an answer. It's nice that it is truly nonpartisan. It is nice that it is 49 and that magic number of 33 to move things forward. And that means always you have to work with the other side. Look, as the former vice chairman of Metro Community College, advocating for workforce development and grants, our DC delegation is entirely Republican. And what does that mean? You sit down, you roll your sleeves up, and you find solutions for your community. That's something that we need to do in the unicameral. That's something that we need to continue to do also down in Lincoln. In my district is 40% Republican, 30% Dems, and the rest is nonpartisan after the new redistrict. that really means I have a purple district. People ask me, are you Dem? Are you Republican? I said, I'm Nebraskan, and I'm putting my country first. I'm putting Nebraska next. I'm putting my family there, and we need to do that over our party. We've got to learn to work together because this divide between all of our districts has got to stop, and it's doing nothing but hurting Nebraskans.
In the legislature and in politics and in my community, I have a reputation as a leftist. And that's something that I lean into and I embrace, and that's totally who I am. I get that. But I'm also very proud of my reputation as a defender of the institution of our unicameral legislature. As a lawmaker, I've gotten to go to conferences all over the world, really, and all of the other lawmakers that I meet from other states are so jealous of what we have in Nebraska, whether they're Democrats or Republicans or conservative or progressive, whatever. They're so jealous that everybody in the Nebraska unicameral has an equal chance to get their bill heard. Every bill that we introduce gets a hearing. They are so jealous that we don't have this hierarchical system of having to pay your dues and having to work your way up and kiss the right butts and do all the things right in order to get power. Everybody is really coming in there equal. And conservatives can't get anything done without the support of some progressives, and certainly vice versa. And that's the way we need to keep it, because that's how we make sure that the most people in Nebraska are represented by the policies that we pass.
All right, I have asked you all some very hard questions tonight, and I so appreciate your answers. They've been very helpful and insightful. So we're going to end with one last question before we move to closing statements. And hopefully this is a little easier, but what is your favorite thing about the district you're running in? What is your favorite thing about your district? And I think, if I'm keeping my order right, okay, thank you. Quiz.
I have lived in the same general area for, I've got to think about it now, 25 years, 27 years. I love the part of town that I live in. My kids went to Millard schools for junior high and high school. Our church is in that area. We have friends and family in that area. It's home for us. It's been really fascinating and enjoying going out and knocking doors in neighborhoods and seeing little parts of the district that I was less familiar with than others. But it's really been enjoyable to meet people that are like-minded. As was spoken, I'm talking to both Republicans and Democrats and people, whoever's out in the front yard mowing the grass that day. And it's just really interesting to meet them and find out what's important to them and what they want to see happen in the district. And what we find out is that we pretty much want the same things. We want a safe, secure environment to live in, to raise our families, to raise our kids, and to live and work and play. So I love my district. Thanks for an easy one.
I like to save it till the end.
So for me, I think my favorite part of my district is how close-knit we all are. You can track through generations and generations of yearbooks and history through Ralston and Millard, and know that all of us return to this area because we know the magic of educating our kids in these schools. We know the microcosm that happens in this small town and the big city. And honestly, the education that happens at Ralston is probably my favorite thing that happens in the district. Not only do we back our teachers and our staff fully, but we invest in things like career training in a way that no other school does. We invest in our teachers, in our kids, in our parents. We even have Parent University. We invest fully in every student, knowing that someday they will bring their kids back here to be educated also. They will return to that little magic in the city to be a part of it all again.
What I love about LD 18, other than I live there, there's something for everyone in LD 18. I was writing the list, and I'm like, how many? We have mass transit, 3 public school districts. Lake Flanagan, what an amazing place. Lake Cunningham, glad to see the sea is open. So many parks. Innovation, Google is in my district. We talk about how we're using clean energy and developments of moving not just the eastern side of the state, but the whole district in itself moving into the 21st and 22nd century. there are farms, there's Wenningoff farms and private farms. So seeing that mix for everyone there, restaurants and patios and wherever you like to watch your Husker game, you could pick from each end, north, south, east, west. It really is a true microcosm of Nebraska. It is an amazing balance of work, living, and playing.
I love y'all, and I'm a Nebraska girl, but I live in the best district. District 8 is the best. And next question. No, just kidding. Whenever any of you want to go to a fun bar or you want to go have a nice dinner, you come to my district. You come to Dundee or Benson and you go to one of our wonderful nightlife establishments, one of our award-winning restaurants. We have Blue Ribbon award-winning schools. When I was in high school and college, I went to house parties at places in my district. The governor lives in my district. Clearly the people have spoken and everyone agrees that District 8 is a really great place to live and grow your family.
I really like the fact that there are three school districts in my district. I think they're three of the largest in the state, and they offer a great education for our children. And I think that really unites the community. It's something that everybody can participate in as far as supporting our children. The amenities in the district are fabulous. It's centrally located, and it's an opportunity to really help three different school districts in many, many ways. And I've been involved in education as far as serving on school boards for almost 15 years. And I think that the combination of Westside, OPS, and Millard, that's kind of a hidden jewel in itself, to be able to have those three school districts in LD20.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, well, we will shift to closing statements, so you'll each have a minute, and then we'll do some quick wrap-ups. So let's see, I believe we're starting, am I still in the right order here?
Oh man, is it mean? Do I got to kick off? All right, I guess I will start the finishing of it up. So I have spent the last 5 years working in a state agency as an accountant and really understanding the background workings of government and how it works, all of the timelines, how to do budget adjustments, but even more than that, digging into the legislature and how much it truly affects every single citizen. I had someone tell me one time that they don't pay attention to the legislature, and my response was, that doesn't keep it from affecting your life. And so I want to be the person that is down there and watching out for my community and making sure that even the people that aren't paying attention are watched out for, are cared for, are thought about. When I worked in arts and accessibility, I came across a phrase that said, nothing about us without us, which means if you're going to tell my story, let me be a part of the narrative. And I will take that into my work in Lincoln, and I will not make legislation about you without you. I will make sure that your voice is a part of the narrative. Woo!
Well, again, thank you for today. I really appreciate it, and thank you for League of Women Voters for putting this on, and you out there watching. As a father, a community advocate, I've dedicated my entire life to try to leave things better than I found it. That is around education, adult basic education, literacy, technology investments, and even now in my art gallery. And I tell you all that because of my learned experience. As a youth, I have experienced homelessness, food insecurity, living on a system, losing my father age of 6, every darn statistic you can imagine. And majority of those issues were based around public policy. So when someone is making those decisions, that learned experience is important when it comes to dictating how it's going to impact our families across the state. And in the final closing in that, not only are those learned experiences in public policy really important, when I speak to a voter or I'm an advocate down in the legislature, I can say not only do I understand, I'm wearing the same size shoes.
A big reason that I originally ran for the Nebraska Legislature is that in 20 years of living in my district, of being a business owner in my district, of getting to know people as a public school parent and a member of the community and an activist and an advocate, I've seen a lot of fighters come and go. And I've seen a lot of people give so much of their time and so much of their money, and for most people, they don't have much of either, so that's a lot to ask. And when they're already working 2 jobs and they're taking care of kids and they're working hard for the causes they believe in, it really breaks my heart to see people say that maybe Nebraska isn't really the place that they want to call home. This is where I live. This is where I've put down roots. I have always been here fighting for us. And you know, I look forward to bringing my passion and my experience and my integrity and my grit back to the legislature to be an advocate for everybody in Nebraska who's been waiting for somebody to stand up and fight for them.
I love to serve, and this is a great opportunity to serve not only my district but the state. My experiences are focused on public safety, on education, on strengthening mental health services, and reducing property taxes. Not reducing aid to schools, but getting more state aid to schools. All of those things are very, very important with respect to this state. And it's very, very important that we keep young people here. It's very important that we have a workforce that encourages people to stay here, that they are welcome, that this is a diverse state, that this is a state that has the ability to be the best state in the country, and there are a number of things that this legislature can do to point it in that direction, and I'm proud to hopefully be able to serve.
When people have asked me why I'm running, the best answer I can give them is that it's a calling. I truly can't, I've got an engineering education. I can't build a spreadsheet to tell you why I'm running. But what I can tell you is that I've lived a lifetime of service. And I've lived a lifetime that's been illustrated and demonstrated by not sitting in the cheap seats and complaining, but by getting into the fight and taking on tough issues and taking on challenging things and trying to make things better. And that's the way I'm wired, that's the way I'm built, and that's what I would want to do for the state of Nebraska. I want to leave a legacy for my kids and my grandkids, and I want to leave the state a better place than it is today. I'd like to see it safe and secure, and I'd like to see equal opportunities for every citizen in the state of Nebraska. If I'm elected, that's what I'll do.
Thank you all so very much. Genuinely, deeply, we appreciate you being here tonight. We appreciate that you've been here. Thank you. Again, I'm Rachel Gibson for the League of Women Voters, and we hope that you'll get out and vote on November 8th.